This is Galileo Galilei, the father of science and cool names. Cough, cough, duck face. Anyways, Galileo Galilei was an Italian astronomer, physicist, engineer, and philosopher. He is often and widely referred to as the father of modern science. No science. He is your father. Galileo was the oldest of 6 siblings. You guys, Galileo has 6 younger siblings. You know how much of a pain it is to have younger siblings?
No. I don't
you
know.
Guys are sick. Galileo's father, Vincenzo Galilei, a famous lutenist and a composer. Galileo's father was a music teacher and a famous musician. His family moved to the city of Florence when he was 10 years old. It was in Florence that Galileo began his education at Camaldolo's monastery. Galileo was a really good musician and an excellent student. So, Galileo used to play lute, eh? Pretty cool, eh? Anyways, Galileo wanted to become a doctor when he finished high school. So he went to the University of Pisa to study medicine in 1581. While Galileo was at university, Galileo became interested in physics and mathematics. Mr. Trask Central. One of his first scientific observations was with a lamp hanging from the ceiling in the cathedral. He noticed that despite how far the lamp swung, it took the same amount of time to swing back and forth. The observation didn't agree with the common scientific principles of the day. In 1585, Galileo left the university and got a job as a teacher. He began to experiment with pendulums, levers, and balls, and other objects. He tried to describe how they moved using mathematical equations. He even invented an advanced measuring device called the hydrostatic balance. Dun, dun, dun. Now, during the time of Galileo, there weren't really quote-unquote scientists as we know them today. People studied the works of classical philosophers and thinkers such as Aristotle. They didn't run experiments or test out ideas. They just believed them to be true. Galileo, however, had different ideas. He wanted to test the principles and see if he could observe them in the real world. This was a new concept to the people of his time and laid the foundation for the scientific method. If you remember, we learned this at the beginning of the year.
Grab a piece of pizza. The 17th century feature is Galileo Galilei, a scientist who questioned everything the church had to say. Like, well, how's about gravity? You think a heavy object will fall rapidly? Naturally, Galileo wanted proof. He used experiments to obtain the truth.
So if I drop these cannonballs at the same time, they'll fall at the same time.
And now he's holding 2 cannonballs dropped from the top, and both of them should plan to fall. At the same moment, though, one was heavier. Boom! Proof gravity's constant. Get ready for a revolution. But the church wouldn't listen, and later he was locked up by the Inquisition. That's what can happen when you make a commitment. The scientific method to the match. The hypothesis is the second step, then you test it. That's what an experiment is, of course. Analyzing the results is the 4th. Have we reached a conclusion? Do we need more support? That's the 5th step. Yep, we've been waiting. The 6th step, take our results, communicate them. The scientific method starts out when you ask a question. The hypothesis is the second step, then you test it. That's what an experiment is, of course. Analyzing the results is the 4th. Have we reached a conclusion? Do we need more support? That's the 5th step. Yep, we've been waiting. The 6th step, take our results, communicate them.
Later on, as Galileo studied the planets and the sun, he became convinced that the Earth and the planets orbited the sun. In 1632, he wrote a book called the Dialogue Concerning the Two Chief World Systems. In this book, he described why he thought the Earth orbited the Sun. However, the powerful Catholic Church considered Galileo's ideas as false and rebellious ideas. At first, they sentenced him to life in prison, but later allowed him to live at his home in Tuscany under house arrest. Shortly after the incident, Galileo continued to write while under house arrest. In his later years, he became blind. He died on January 8th, 1642, after sadly suffering from a fever and heart palpitations. Now, what did Galileo research? He researched many things throughout his career. He studied big and complicated topics and put lots of effort into studying them as well. His most successful topic was astronomy. Galileo is best remembered as an astronomer. He discovered many things in that area. Second was mathematics and engineering. In math, he studied measurements and went to a mechanic university where he taught math for 18 years. Now for physics, Galileo dedicated a big chunk of his life to physics. He discovered many things and researched further on many topics as well. In Galileo's early life, he studied medicine. He later quit and joined mathematics and mechanics, as medicine was his focus. Some of Galileo's plentiful discoveries were Jupiter's moons, that the planets rotate around each other, the sun the center of the galaxy, phases of Venus, the thermoscope, the telescope, the moons orbiting Jupiter, the discovery of sunspots, the craters on the moon, the military compass, the Leaning Tower of Pisa experiment, the discovery of the Milky Way, and lastly, hydrostatic balance. Those are some of Galileo's many discoveries. Newton's laws relate acceleration to net forces. Net forces are what keep the Earth rotating around the Sun and explain the planetary rotation that Galileo discovered. Galileo invented the scientific method, which involves coming up with a hypothesis and testing the hypothesis through testing. This was the foundation that led to Newton discovering the three laws. The scientific method was used to prove Newton's three laws. Newton's laws also explains the laws of gravitation. Gravitation is what holds stars close together and is the fundamental force for holding the Milky Way together.
Thank you for watching from Sam?
Yeah. And this kid, whatever.
Bob.
Yeah, Bob. Thank you from Sam's beautiful Mac.
And my beats.
And the beats. This kid's rich.
No, I'm not.
No one likes his computer, by the way.